Welcome to today's Global Connections program. I'm Bill Miller. What role can art and artists play in promoting understanding, unity, and peace around the world? What is one artist through the Nation of Nations paintings doing to help achieve this concept? We'll be back in just a moment to talk about these and other important issues. Welcome back to our program. Today we're looking at the role of artists and art in trying to help build a bridge to really span the gap and to promote better understanding, healing, and unity and cohesion around the world and within communities. My guest today is an expert in this area, especially because of a special painting that she has done. My guest today is Marjorie Gayon. Marjorie Gayon, a native of New York and formerly a student at Hampshire College in Amherst, Massachusetts, is now an internationally renowned artist who was inspired by a visit to the UN to launch a major 10-panel art presentation titled The Nation of Nations. My second guest is Farzeen Saider. Farzeen Saider is partner in Nation of Nations and the ECHO program Amor, an art and design studio with Marjorie Gayon. He is a practicing architect and has received numerous awards for his work. Marjorie, Farzeen, welcome to today's Global Connections program.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
I appreciate you being with me. Marjorie, you have done a painting called the Nation of Nations Project. What was the seed for this? We're going to be looking at it in a video in just a minute, but what was the seed that promoted this concept and really got you excited about doing this type of painting?
Well, I grew up in New York, and for people who don't know, New York really it's an international city. So if you grow up in New York, you grow up as a citizen of the world. And the other thing about New York is that it's filled with public art. My mom used to take me to museums, and we would walk and see the most beautiful things every single day, and art was part of my life. And when I was 11 years old, my class, because I was in New York, we took a trip to the United Nations, and we sat in on a General Assembly meeting. And a woman was standing at the podium and talking, and there was a little dial that could translate the languages, and as she was speaking, I started turning the dial, and one voice turned into 1,000 tongues. And I thought about it, and I just thought, everybody is looking for the same thing. Everyone wants to be seen, everyone wants to be heard. And I think that that combination of public art, which was always really big and monumental, and this being at the UN and seeing the world big and monumental, but realizing that everyone's looking for the same thing, that was a seed that got planted in me that later took root.
Mm-hmm. Now, you mentioned you lived in New York, you're a New Yorker, and you went to the United Nations and to help motivate you. Were there other programs too? I know one that comes to mind is the UNICEF, Trick or Treat for UNICEF program, which has really been a very popular program for I think 1,000,000 years or something, as far back as I can remember it, or maybe the creation of UNICEF back in the late 40s. But did that play a role in it as far as going out to help collect money for maternal and child health care programs?
It was very popular with us. Now, you know, I would trick or treat in an apartment building and then running around through all the streets, and the doors that you would knock on would be opened by people from all over the world. So we were the children of the world collecting for the children of the world. And those little orange boxes and the pennies that people would drop in, it was just, you know, it was a wonderful program to be involved in, and it meant a lot to me.
Mm-hmm. Well, you have been gracious enough to give us a video, and it gives an overview, and our viewers can see exactly what we're talking about with this 10-panel Nation of Nations artwork that you did. But let's go to the video and we'll come back and talk about it.
Hello, I'm Marjorie Gayon. I remember going to the UN when I was young. Spellbound in the General Assembly Hall, I could hear 100 languages translated into one voice. In that spirit, I've created this project, Nation of Nations. In a time where we are divided along every possible line, I've made a project whose singular purpose is to unify, locally, regionally, nationally, and internationally. I believe in the power of beauty. I believe in the power of art. And I believe underneath all our divisions, we are yearning to be connected with one another in a meaningful way. This project asks one central question: how can we form a more perfect union? We can address this at home, in our schools, across our cities, and across our countries. For not only are we a nation of nations, we are a nation among nations. Like statues from ancient Greece, the figures in the 10 panels that comprise Nation of Nations are unnamed and unknown. They are meant to represent the human form, us, without the entanglements of gender, race, and religion. Across the figures are fragments from the anthems America the Beautiful and My Country 'Tis of Thee. As a child, I remember the feeling of being embraced and protected. We have to give the same feeling to all our children here in America and beyond. Adjacent to the head is the prayer, "Have mercy on us," which appears in 10 languages: Cherokee, Chinese, Spanish, Swahili, Russian, Haitian Creole, English, Arabic, Hindi, and Hebrew. And finally, the universal language of mathematics is interwoven through the images. The way that numbers identify and define us, who and what we are, how much and how little we have, and the way numbers have been used as tattoos to separate us. At first glance, across the room, across any distance or boundary, I see you as unknown. Like the statues, you are a stranger to me. How can I transform my fear of the unknown? I have to see you within me, for then my heart is open, and this is the essence of Nation of Nations.
Marjorie, that was a very interesting video. I think that gives us a really good idea, obviously, of what the painting was about. When you look at that, you look at the various shades that of colors that you used, and again, I don't understand all of them because I'm not an artist, but how did you determine these shades, and did your upbringing or your childhood tie into this, or your visit to the UN, or how did you pick your colors?
Well, the figures in the project are basically the same. The only thing that changes in the project are the shades of color, which are like the shades of the people that I grew up with. So you can tell a little bit more about that.
I think it's very much like the dial that changed the languages. It is one container, but many shades. It's one word, but it was translated into many different tongues. So the unity behind all the differences appears in the work.
Now, you picked 10 languages. You have 10 panels, 10 languages. You have Cherokee, you have Haitian Creole. How did you pick your languages? There are 6 official languages at the United Nations. There are 6,000 languages around the world. But how did you decide to pick those languages?
Well, to some degree, it was random, but Cherokee was the first language, which was sort of the language of the indigenous. Then I picked Hebrew, Hindi, Arabic, Chinese, Haitian Creole, because there was the terrible earthquake was going on in Haiti, and while I was working on the project, I kept hearing about that. Spanish, Cyrillic Russian, and I tried to hit everything, but it wasn't really possible.
You couldn't put all 6,000 languages on there.
It's
That's
a big
for sure.
tent, but not every single language is in there.
Exactly. Farzine, were you involved in selecting the languages?
Actually, the
analyzing
description.
them?
Sorry. Just the analyzing and describing them, but there is a particular meaning to them. My country being Cherokee, and Cherokee representative of the indigenous people of the world. There's some unique factor about the indigenous people that they realize and know their environment. And specifically for the Native Americans, they did not see themselves apart from their environment. They saw themselves as part of the environment, a piece within it. Where perhaps some other cultures that migrated to the land saw themselves apart from their environment, having dominion over it. The Cherokees or the natives always see themselves as within, part of. And so they represent to us that aspect of the land. So we begin with the land, and the way this pieces work, their progression. The last panel, notice it's shining, representative of light. So we go from land to light. It's a journey. It's a journey of us through life, all of us. That we go from the body to spirit, and how we transform throughout our lives.
Mm-hmm. Which is very important. You mentioned how the Native Americans in the United States, indigenous peoples all around the world, wherever they might live, I'm sure that the majority of them consider themselves as part of the environment. They have a great respect for nature. They feel they're an integral part of it. As we look at our modern societies, and I'll just throw this open to each of you, as we look at our modern societies and how we keep moving supposedly towards a developed state and more progress, but we see more and more housing going up, we see willy-nilly subdivisions being thrown up, we see air pollution taking place. I know there are governmental agencies trying to control this. We see climate change as our number one problem in all probability. Should we, as humans, the 7.3 billion people who are stewards of the earth, should we be more concerned about our environment and maybe try to focus more on that instead of maybe just a random development and say, well, we just have to look at the gross domestic product and make sure it gets bigger and bigger. But should we not think more about the environment?
Well, the basic idea behind the project is that there is no separation. There is no separation between any of us. There's no separation between us and the earth. So
it is correct. It is. This is the lesson, actually, a part of the work. For example, I can say that we receive oranges from California, and when we open an orange and drink the juice in the orange, is basically the water from the Pacific Ocean that has become cloud and into rain, into the ground, through the tree, and it has been sweetened just for our palate. Mm-hmm. And so as I am eating the orange, I am actually drinking Pacific Ocean in this other form. I am not apart from anything. As part of this progression through this, there are things that maybe if I would address them, it would answer your question much better. The very first one that we talked about, how, the Cherokee language, a representative of the beginning of this, it represents how we are interconnected with everything, and how the universe is very intentional about everything. That we do have to steward our environment, and we are part of it. But beyond that, in the progression of this, the next step of this, our process through life, so after we've established this, that we are one with everything, the next step through life is knowing the self. If I say the world, that know the self first. And what we state here is what am I before who am I is more important. And if you notice on the panels, the figures are actually combination of two images. It appears as one, but if you look, it's two. Mm-hmm. And I look at myself and us, there's a part of us that is a material part, it's my physical part, and there is another part of me that's a collection of my thoughts, emotions, feelings, imagination, and that's the part that produces all the great novels, the great works of art. That's the part that really initiates any change in our lives. Our physical part of our body is actually quite neutral. So it is that we sort of the self. The next one of these, that was the Avdi, the next one, the I Sing panel, it describes, it is still part of the self. I suppose I best describe quickly what the steps are in here. The very first one is 5 steps in this, 10 panels, 5 steps. First one was the foundation of question. The second step is the self, knowing the self. The third step is now knowing the world. Mm-hmm. Once you know those, then comes responsibility, which is the 4th step. And the 5th step is purpose. We're here, we have a purpose in life. And when you have power, you responsibly use the power. So knowing the self was important. Beyond that, we go into the part that is the world, which the 3 panels, Sweet Land, Of Liberty, and Oh Beautiful, are part of. In Sweet Land, some of the discussions are about heart and mind and stewardship of the mind. The Of Liberty basically discusses about wisdom as a key to freedom. And the third one would be content versus container. After that, going into responsibility, then we discuss issues such as correction of perception, cause before effect. The environment is part of this because we look at it as cause, but it's the effect of us. And then there's a discussion about forgiveness as well. And then the last part, when we go into purpose, we discuss voyage, and then rise and shine and let there be light. Mm-hmm. In other words, to answer your question finally, is to say that what we are experiencing out there is an effect of what we are within, in that mind and heart. When we clean that up, our environment cleans up as well. The environment has problems because we are thinking differently.
This is a beautiful painting. It's a very complex painting, and I'm sure that our viewers would like to go to MarjorieGuyon.com and look at it in greater detail. And when this program comes up again, they might even want to tape it, and they can go back and look at that 3-minute video that you have, because it's a very beautiful painting and one that I don't think we can grasp. I couldn't. Maybe somebody else could on the first take. Marjorie, you mentioned earlier about a bigger room. What exactly was this concept of a bigger room that you were talking about?
Well, I've spent 28 years as an exhibition artist, which means I have been in a lot of rooms placing paintings and seeing the peace and power and beauty that a painting can bring to a room. And it's like when you're in a room and the shades are closed and then you open them and you let the light in, it makes it a bigger room. I just started thinking, what if you took this idea of the power and beauty and peace of art and you started using it to bring it out into the world, and you made, rather than someone's living room or a corporate lobby or an office, if that was not where you put your art, what if you put your art in concept form out into the world? What kind of effect could it have? And it's a vision shift. Like when you go to the eye doctor and he says better, worse, it's like this is opening up the world to the concept of beauty.
Exactly. Now, your exhibit has been on display at the University of Kentucky, Lexington, Kentucky, USA, until May 2014. And then what would you like to do with it at that point? Would you like to have it go around the country, around the world? Are you looking at hot spots around the world, such as the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, or perhaps what's going on in the Middle East or on the Korean Peninsula? Are there areas where you think this type of painting could be helpful as far as getting people to rethink what they're doing and maybe to build a bridge between people who misunderstand one another, who really don't like each other, but this type of painting may get them thinking about, are there ways we can coexist, that we can live peacefully side by side and achieve our self-actualization and achieve our goals?
We are very interested in this project going wherever it can serve the greatest purpose and where it can be of the greatest use.
We do have developed workshops around the concept of the project, and seminars and talks that we are touring and presenting at various places. The panels themselves will become available after the end of spring of 2014, so they become available for it to tour to various places. We have not located the places, but it becomes available at that time. It can address a lot of the conflict issues. It's not limited to that. It's more about self-realization and actualization than anything. But the idea that I will see myself sitting here and see you sitting there, and identifying with myself as this physical portion would then bring the next thought about then my interests. And then after that, how can I protect these interests against other? If we follow that line, then we arrive at why there are conflicts in the world. And so in this manner, this work can help in conflict areas. Once we see truly what we are and go beyond the physical part, we realize that we are interconnected, and your interest and mine becomes one at some point. Yeah,
please.
And she actually asked this question of how do we become a better state of unity, and answers it in the panels. If you notice the statements up on top of the panels, they're all the same statement but in different languages. How can we become a better state of union? When we are one in mind, or when we are one in spirit.
Let me, I'd like to get one more question before we run out of time, but very briefly, if we think back to the horrors of World War II, 60 million people died. We saw the Holocaust, the horrendous Holocaust. Over 6 million Jews perished. We see that Europe lay in ruins. Parts of Asia had been destroyed. It was absolutely the most devastating war ever known to humans at any point in history. As we look at that, what role do you think, I know what you're trying to do and will do with your painting, the Nation of Nations, but is there a role that more artists could be involved in? Are there other things that could be done? Obviously, you don't represent all the hundreds of thousands, millions of artists around the world, but are there some things that they can think about doing that they're not doing now to help promote this peace, understanding, and unity?
Well, I mean, art is the language of beauty and hope. At least that's how I see it. And I mean, we were talking about this before we came over, and you had some things that you had said about that. What could be done?
It is actually, if we lead with love in our hearts, we realize all of these disasters that has occurred through human history, there has been a lesson in all of them for us. The World War I, World War II, all the disaster that they also brought the end of colonialism as well. Through the League of Nations and later the United Nations, people respected the sovereignty of other nations. People became free. You're alluding to the Holocaust. The Holocaust actually afterwards taught that one body is not more important than another body. So there was lessons in each one of these. Artists have a way of have a wonderful way of illuminating the essence of a subject more intensely, because they go beyond the symbolisms in language. They go beyond language itself. So in those terms, artists can describe better for us what the issue is, and sometimes they can also describe the answers.
You're absolutely right, and I think that they, as well as everybody on the planet, we all have a role in promoting world peace, better understanding amongst peoples and nations, and artists can certainly play a very valuable role, and we hope that they will get involved. Well, Marjorie Gayon, Francine Sater, I want to thank you so very much for bringing the Nation of Nations to us. We did a taping on this almost 2 years ago, but I wanted to see what the follow-up was on it, and it looks like it's been very exciting and very interesting. But thank you so very much for a very interesting and a very informative program.
Thank you for
Thank
having
you,
us.
Bill.
Thank you. I'm Bill Miller. Thank you for joining us on today's Global Connections program.